Hey, what's up, guys? It's Richard here, back with Cosmic Human Design. And today it's time to continue with the Hexagram series. And we're on Hexagram 2 now. And I decided that I wanted to incorporate both the Gene Keys Shadow Gift and City and lots of other information that Richard Rudd has on genekeys.com website on the Living Library, which you can see right here. And also we're going to look at Ra's descriptions of all the lines from his Rave I Ching and kind of do a compare and contrast throughout the rest of the series, which I think will be very insightful. All right, so let's get on with it then. Hexagram 2, nature. Kun over kun, earth over earth. 6 yin lines. This hexagram is inseparable from hexagram 1, as both hexagrams show the two sides of the cosmic whole. Hexagram 2 shows the energy of the dark that attracts the light, and thus finds guidance. The judgment. Nature is great through its interpenetration with the cosmic consciousness, which is hexagram 1, by the way. It discerns what feels harmonious and allows that to lead with the firmness of a mare. If a person tries to lead, he goes astray, but if he follows, he finds guidance. It is favorable to find friends in the west and south and to forego friends in the east and north. Perseverance brings good fortune. Nature is great through its interpenetration with the cosmic consciousness, refers to nature as the expression of the harmony of the cosmic consciousness. This is true of human and animal nature, as well as for plants, rocks, the earth, and all the forms that are expressed in the cosmos. Nature, we learn from the sage, is cosmic consciousness compressed in the forms. These myriad forms find guidance through their interconnectedness with the cosmic consciousness, and in turn feed back their experiences to it, which is our connection of inner truth, by the way, hexagram 61. Together, they comprise a living whole that evolves from the interaction of the whole with all its parts. Simultaneously, while one part of the cosmic consciousness is compressed into form, the consciousness of the whole is expanded through what is experienced. Interpenetrating also refers to the helpers of nature or forces of nature and their capacity to help the whole through creating transformations in the atomic realm. All transformations occur through them. All the individual forms in nature discern what's harmonious through their inner truth, which is their direct connection with the cosmic consciousness. This inner truth is imprinted in everything that exists and is an essential part of the guidance system which each thing possesses. It is a memory of what cosmic harmony feels like. When each form allows that memory to guide it, it is in harmony with the whole. The firmness of a mare refers to the state of mind that attracts the light of inner truth. This is a state of being open and receptive, in contrast to just being empty. The open mind is actively reflective and thereby attracts inner truth. Unlike the empty mind, it distinguishes what it takes in by feeling its quality, whether it is harmonious or discordant. The empty mind, by contrast, is passive and unreflective, and therefore susceptible to taking in all sorts of ideas without discerning how they feel. In terms of dark and light, the darkness of the open mind attracts the light of inner truth. The metaphor of the mare as an animal that is commonly thought to be more willing to follow behind other horses than the stallions also tells us that we have a choice as to where we put our will: to follow the way of the cosmos, which is the way of inner truth and harmony, or to follow the way of convention and the collective ego. If we are to learn how to put ourselves in harmony with the cosmic whole and remain in harmony with it, we need to develop the daily habit of asking for the help and guidance of the sage or cosmic teacher. When we enter situations without the sage's help, we are forced to rely on our intellect, which, if not connected with inner truth, keeps us in the parallel reality created by the collective ego. And you can do that by just consulting the I Ching, by the way. The relationship between the sage and the student is never one of dominance by the sage and servility by the student. The sage places no requirements. Always is a question of will as to whether the student wants to belong to the cosmic reality or to the parallel reality. For the student, the learning process can occur only through a cooperation that comes from the deep desire to reunite with the cosmic whole from which he has become separated. The student needs to understand that the process of reuniting is gradual, much like peeling an onion layer by layer. He begins at a point where he no longer recognizes his inner truth. The sage helps him by reflecting his inner truth in the daily situations of his life. If the student asks each day for help, he begins to experience what it means to connect with the multitudinous helpers of the invisible world. Each new day, he develops an inner dependency upon the invisible world, which makes him gradually ever freer of unhealthy dependencies on others and on the collective ego. After some time, when his awareness of his inner truth has become established, his dependence on his inner truth and on help from the invisible world becomes his way of life. The mayor and the person presumed to be cooperating with the mayor is also a metaphor for the correct cooperation between humans and the rest of nature, including other humans. This cooperation requires sensitivity on the part of humans and feeling toward nature. It is this sensitivity and feeling that create a complementarity between the human and the helping aspects of nature. And that's described further in hexagram 10, conducting oneself. And this hexagram informs us about the way our original natures automatically cooperate with the intelligence of nature. This happens through our bodily consciousness, which, like the intelligence of nature, is a feeling consciousness. Each cell and organism possesses this feeling consciousness. An example is the intelligence of what we call the involuntary nervous system. It knows perfectly well how to regulate itself and interface with the environment without the need to think. Thinking, however, often interferes with its abilities. The intelligence of nature, including our own natures, responds to human thought in a variety of ways, as the various hexagrams make clear. It operates as a complete intelligence of a kind that is not understandable when we combine our perceptions only to the two frontal lobes of the brain. Nevertheless, by seeing and listening within, each individual has the ability to connect with and experience nature's intelligence and help. We experience this when we consult the I Ching. Like the individual who possesses senses and abilities far beyond the outer senses of seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, and tasting, the intelligence of nature perceives far beyond what humans can imagine when they combine their view to perceiving and trying to understand only the visible aspects of existence. The views that are produced from this limited perspective lead to the mistake of seeing the universe as turning around humans and only as a system of mechanics. If a person tries to lead, refers to people who act on the collective ego's beliefs that all things depend upon human activity and intervention. How many people do you know like that? Such people, because of their human-centered view of the universe, are unable to draw upon the helping forces that are present in all of nature and therefore go astray, meaning they separate from the whole. If, however, they will rid themselves of this arrogant view and ask for help, they will find friends in the helpers of the invisible world, which is what the judgment is referring to as friends in the West and South. The image of friends in the North and East, however, refers to relying on human helpers that act within the framework of the collective ego. That is, they help from false feelings of obligation, guilt, the wish to be recognized, or from the intention of gaining power and control. In this respect, perseverance brings good fortune can be a warning to distinguish where one's helpers come from. This hexagram also shows how non-form is brought into form. An example is the way helping gifts of insight are given to humans in the form of inventions, new steps in awareness, some works of literature, music, theater, and what people experience as achievements of genius. Help comes as well in thousands of other ways: receiving money, the right relationship, the most appropriate job, finding a parking place, or other conveniences when one needs it. Help comes to all aspects of nature as well as to humans in the perfect form that is needed. The only times this help becomes blocked or distorted is when humans assume that they are the ones in charge of nature and arrogantly interfere in its processes rather than cooperating with it. Traditionally, this hexagram has been associated with the dark and also with receptivity. Light, as energy particles, is activated by its attraction to the dark, to enter the space the dark inhabits. Space is not empty in the sense commonly assumed. It contains the dark, which itself is energy. Now, whether that's the same thing as what science calls dark energy today or not, I don't know, but that's an interesting question. It is furthermore the receptive medium through which light travels. The dark is one part of the cosmos, the other part is the light. Space is interpenetrated by the cosmic consciousness. Through the interaction, the cosmic consciousness gets compressed into forms and is again transformed from form into non-form. This hexagram also addresses spells that have been put on nature by mistaken human ideas. Spells, which are brought on by incorrect conclusions about the nature of things and the way they operate, freeze their functioning in accordance with the projected image, preventing them from functioning normally. What we then observed is not the harmony of nature, but nature disturbed. These spells remain in effect until someone recognizes their existence and says the inner no to them. Saying the no activates the helper of transformation to break the spell. To free nature, it is only necessary to take them away. Any attempt to restore or protect nature puts yet other spells on nature's ability to return to harmony. Such attempts come from the same human-centered view that created the problems in the first place. Wow, so that's saying that, wow, we shouldn't have the attitude that, hey, we're going to preserve nature, we're going to replant all these trees. Nature doesn't need our help. Um, and having that view, having that belief, puts a spell on nature that inhibits its abilities, in fact, which is astounding. Application. Um, Receiving this hexagram is meant, first of all, to teach a person what nature is and that he can relate to it correctly only when he recognizes that he is an equal part of it. Second, it is meant to make him aware that all his mistaken ideas about nature affect it adversely, causing it to operate in distorted ways. Receiving this hexagram is also to make him aware that he has a responsibility to relate to nature with sensitivity and feeling. Third, it informs him that he, like all the other expressions of nature, is dependent on his connection with the cosmos for guidance. Spells connected with the hexagram are created by seed phrases and images having to do with seeing the human role as the creator of order in nature, which is what almost every esoteric tradition does. Offshoots of this view see human nature is divided into a lower and higher nature, with human animal nature being demonized. The demonizing of humans' animal nature and the guilt associated with it create the perversions that lead to many human criminal acts. Also, describing nature as wild and threatening creates a perverted relationship between humans and the other animals. Other spells are created by viewing nature as a system of mechanics devoid of consciousness or feeling. And isn't that what we hear Ra always talk about in human design? That it's just the mechanics. And in fact, Ra has said many times that he's a complete atheist and that there is in fact no yang in the universe. It's all yin actually at the base level. Well, this begs to differ. Line 1. Okay, here we go into the lines. And remember, the gene key, it's useful to have the gene keys Shadow Gibson City in mind when contemplating or when reading this. In fact, I found to be very helpful, which the shadow for the second hexagram is dislocation. So feeling like we're out of place. We're not connected to the whole. We're separated from the whole, right? That's kind of what it was just describing. Orientation is the gift, which is the gift of knowing our place in nature, in the whole. And unity, of course, is the unity of all things, describing the unity of nature with the entire cosmos. Returning to the one, because there's only one thing in the universe, really, and that's the cosmic consciousness, which we are all part of. Okay, line 1. When there is hoarfrost underfoot, solid ice is not far off. Here, the hoarfrost that precedes ice is a metaphor for the way all mistaken ideas create rigid structures that separate the person who holds them from his unity with the cosmos. This line can refer to the person who harbors the mistaken belief that death is a final end and/or that life is suffering. These views falsely present death as connected with irretrievable loss and separation and slander the nature of the cosmos by denying the truth that life continues after death in different dimensions of consciousness. Such views spoil the joys of life in a body by the constant anticipation of a loss to come. Moreover, they create a fate. What actually happens at death is the transformation that takes the person, animal, plant, etc., over to the next dimension, which is invisible to us. This line also points to the hopelessness that accompanies such views, leading a person to see the cosmos as indifferent and cold. This conclusion is an example of how cause and effect have been reversed by the collective ego. It is not the cosmos that is indifferent to humans or which has abandoned them. It is the person's own mistaken views of the cosmos that have created a separation from it, causing him to feel cold, abandoned, and alone. It is through correcting his mistaken views that he can reunify with the cosmos and end his fate. And remember, one of the main messages of this entire I Ching is that it's about the beliefs that we hold, the views we hold, that are most important to correct and to actually get right, and that can cause the most harm to us. Hoarfrost is also a metaphor for the beginning stage of alienation in a relationship, when a person has begun to allow his heart to close toward one another. The ice refers to the gradual rigidifying of the heart that comes from the conclusion that the other person or situation is hopeless. The person needs to be aware that if he allows his thoughts to continue in this direction, the relationship will certainly end. No situation is hopeless if he asks the sage to help him identify and deprogram any projections, spells, or poison arrows that cause the difficulty. This line also addresses a person who has allowed his heart to close after having been rebuffed for encroaching into another space. The ego is incorrectly blaming the other for hurting his pride and for causing him to lose face. He needs to reject this activity of the ego through saying the inner no. Otherwise, a more serious and unwanted separation from the other will occur. He also needs to ask the helpers to reopen his heart. This line also describes the rigidity that occurs when a person turns his back on the sage by deciding to abandon his efforts at self-correction. He thus gives way to the subliminal protests of the ego that, quote, the ego is not all evil, or I like my ego, listening to the ego speaking as I, lol, or you can't or should not kill your ego. Such a decision separates the person from the sage and all cosmic help and creates a fate. And later on, he also talks about how one of the 10 Commandments, is thou shalt not kill, right? It's actually perhaps some subliminal programming to make us feel guilty or whatever about killing anything, right? Even things that need to be killed, like the ego or these false beliefs. This line can also refer to an illness. The illness is an expression of a disharmony between a person's body and psyche due to mistaken beliefs he has adopted. The beliefs have overridden his body intelligence, disabling its natural ability to function harmoniously. The malfunction's cause can lead to death, the ice mentioned in this line, if the false beliefs are not deleted. Such a person needs to seek out the seed phrases of the false program and rid himself of them. Hoarfrost can also refer to a certain kind of projection that becomes a spell, ice. It is a suspicion that it is in the nature of a person, animal, plant, or other thing to behave in a certain way. This suspicion then projects itself into the psyche of the thing observed, causing it to behave as suspected. The conclusion turns the projection into a spell, locking that thing either temporarily or permanently into the suspected behavior. Such projections are felt by the recipient in some disturbed feelings such as anxiety, depression, inner weakness, and head or body aches. The resulting spells are experienced as compulsive behavior in which the person engages against his will. Often people resign themselves to such behaviors by deciding, quote, that is the way I am. These projections and spells can be easily broken with the help of the sage and the helpers. Line 2, straight. Okay, so yeah, so maybe let's read the line from the Rave after each line of the cosmic I Ching. So Ra describes this hexagram as the receptive. Receptivity is the primal base through which any response is determined, the root of action. And line 1 is intuition, sensitivity to disharmony and atrophy. The importance of aesthetics, whether inborn or acquired, higher knowing through aesthetics. And the detriment, the assertion of ego, there's that word again, in spite of wisdom, the urge for action that will ignore the wisdom of the higher self. Okay, that seems pretty on point. Line 2, straight, square, great. Without effort, everything will be furthered. The characteristics straight, and square, contrary to the traditional interpretation of this line, do not refer to the way nature functions. Nothing in nature follows straight lines and forms squares in the absolute sense. Even crystalline forms are slightly irregular. The words straight and square refer instead to the collective ego's way of building belief systems that justify its existence. The logic of the ego expresses itself in straight lines and absolutes that are shorn of any peripheral considerations. They then are formed into even bigger structures, which are square. The word great would only seem to be the self-flattery of the collective ego in contemplating the powerful effect it has on nature. The cosmos, by contrast, moves zigzag, the way a sailboat sails to its destination. It moves by what feels harmonious, and in this way relates to everything justly. And that just made me think of the Kabbalah, the tree of life, the line of descent of the spheres, the Sephira, is in fact that lightning bolt zigzag. I just saw that actually. Interesting. Let's get rid of that. Squareness also has to do with defining things in terms of time and place as absolutes, thus fixing the thing in spells. In regard to time, this happens when we define a person or situation as always being like that. The always freezes the person or situation in time, and the like that freezes them in the behavior, place to which it refers. When this freezing happens, nothing furthers. Use of the words always and never invariably creates spells that need to be dispelled. So that's very interesting. The word straight, square, great can point to spells that are caused by seeing things, nature, animals, human physiology, etc., as only operating mechanically. This idea comes from the human-centered view that denies that all things in nature have consciousness. The spells created by these views limit nature's creative abilities to help us. They also limit the ability of our bodies to coordinate with the environment, our minds to learn as in learning languages, painting, physical skills, and our abilities to heal and otherwise protect ourselves from disharmonious influences. In the cosmic meaning of this line, the word straight is a metaphor for the way inner truth, because it is in harmony with nature, penetrates straight to the heart of others. There, it connects with their inner truth as feeling rather than thought. It feels square, meaning it feels wholesome and satisfying. It feels great, meaning it inspires others, giving them a sense of relief and harmony. When inner truth is spoken aloud at the right moment, its resonance with others' sense of truth is such that there is no need to defend it or to convince others of it. It is a human-centered view to think that truth needs defending. Interesting. And line 2 in the Rave is genius. Unconscious and unlearnable alignment of stimulus and response, the natural. And Saturn with exaltation is the inner strength to focus and realize, a natural gift for unlearnable knowing. And the detriment, Mars, genius as madness, knowledge exclusively as power for the enhancement of the ego. There we go again. The delusion that knowledge is power. Okay. Line 3, hidden lines. One is able to remain firm and correct in harmony with nature. If by chance you are in the service of a king, seek not works, but allow your efforts to be brought to completion. Hidden lines points to the fact that a person needs to see the issue at hand as part of a greater cosmic plan. In order to fulfill this plan, a person is meant to cooperate with nature to bring increase to the whole. He needs to recognize that all the great achievements of culture come when humans allow themselves to accomplish things hand in hand with nature's helpers. This means that a person takes neither a dominant nor a servile role, since either of these undermines the equality between himself and the helpers. Receiving this line indicates that a person has done his share of the task and now needs to turn it over to the helpers for completion. A danger exists in that he may think he knows what needs to be done to complete the matter. If he acts on such a thought, he will rule out the helpers and thus fail to achieve a true completion. He also creates a fate. A person makes this mistake when he has accepted the pretense put forward by the collective ego that humans are the creators of culture. Just a view wipes out of human consciousness the fact that all great achievements of culture are accomplished in cooperation with nature's helpers. It is they that have provided the writers their insights, the artists their masterpieces, the inventors their inventions, the builders their knowledge and skills, and the medical researchers their discoveries. When, however, the people who have received these gifts falsely credit only themselves, they steal the gifts. The consequence is that the helpers gradually withdraw, depriving the accomplishment of the chi energy that makes it beneficial. Such people also create the fate of losing contact with the source of their creativity. When this is the case, some people, instead of returning to humility, turn to robbing the cosmic gifts from nature by force, as by subjecting animals, plants, and the earth itself to their experiments, or borrowing other people's insights and gifts. Oh, God. In doing so, they create obstruction upon obstruction. See Hexagram 39, meeting obstructions. Receiving this line is a call to return to humility and to apologize to the cosmos and to nature. If a fate has been created, the person needs to rid himself of any connected self-image, such as that of the author, artist, inventor, creator, star, the one who knows, etc. Remember, the ego is all about self-images. The king can be a metaphor for the collective ego or for the cosmic consciousness, depending on which the person serves. A person can also receive this line when he has made a pact with God or with the cosmos to bring something to completion that would serve the greater good, on the condition that he receives wealth or another outcome he desires. By making such a pact, the person has created a fate, which is now in progress, taking away the wealth he has received. The wealth was given to him by the cosmos, not as an answer to his promise, but as an opportunity to fulfill his uniqueness. The fate can be extinguished by ridding himself of the pact, a poison arrow, and by recognizing that he needs to cooperate closely with nature's helpers, which alone can bring these to completion. This line can also refer to the person who follows his inner truth without making anything of it or laying claims to it. Thus, through hidden lines, he activates invisible helpers in his own nature. All right, and line 3 of the Rave, patience. The teacher that never stops being a student, the exaltation Jupiter. Dedication to a lifetime of receptivity with the maturity to accept that the process never ends. When connected permanently to gate 14 through the beat channel, rewards for services rendered. The recognition that receptivity is a lifelong process. And the detriment, Uranus. For the revolutionary, patience is a vice, higher knowing that cannot wait and demands expression. All right, line 4, a tied up sack, no praise, no blame. A tied up sack is a metaphor for a complex of spells in which a person is caught in the form of self-images. These self-images have made him buy into ideas that are pigs and pokes because they are based on subtle self-flatteries. The self-images include high and noble sounding words that are promised to make him superior, such as noble, graceful, intellectual, distinguished, philanthropic, loving, forgiving, compassionate, or spiritual, and presumably lifting him above the perceived lowliness of his animal nature, which he has slandered as base, filthy, plain, simple, earthy, selfish, greedy, and driven by lustful, sensual drives. He has deprived himself of the wholeness of life that is to be experienced in the body. The person who thus slanders his animal nature is caught in a double bind, the type of sack mentioned above. Such a person seeks to hide his animal nature through acquiring, quote, superior attributes. What he does not realize is that in childhood, he was made to feel inherently defective because of his animal nature. This idea has created a hole in the center of his being that he has hoped to fill through becoming superior. Now, despite his high standing, he finds that the hole is still there. He needs to recognize that the hole is automatically removed when he takes away the mistaken ideas that have created it, thus returning his demonized nature to its original wholeness. This line can also indicate a person who sees himself as superior to or separate from the sage and thus has a standoff attitude by which he judges whether the sage is to be trusted. Because his attitude is not truly open-minded, the sage cannot approach. The same applies when a person regards himself as superior to another person, animals, things, or nature itself. He keeps the invisible helpers that exist in himself and all other things blocked from helping him. The same principle applies to the person who regards parts of his body or some of its functions, such as his sexuality, as lowly. This view makes it lowly, thereby separating it from being a means by which cosmic love can be expressed. When it is thus separated from expressing cosmic love, it becomes perverted. It is the sexual aspect of our animal nature that allows us to receive the cosmic nourishment of love that renews our life force chi energy. That's very interesting. So it's actually sex, the physical act of sex, that renews our chi energy. So by debasing our sexual natures, which is part of our animal nature, as lowly, we are actually shutting ourselves off from that cosmic nourishment. Looking at one's animal nature as lowly also blocks its self-healing capacity. Healing occurs when we rid ourselves of those mistaken ideas that divide us into higher and lower parts. These false divisions break up the unity of the light and the dark, which, when not interfered with, interact with each other to complete the cyclical movement of chi energy in every body cell. Healing is not a matter of balancing the light and the dark, but of taking away the ideas that divide them, causing us to see them as opposites in the first place. Efforts to balance them come from the part of the mind that is devoted to abstract ideas. This part has been given a false superiority, and by such flattery has been brought into the service of the collective ego. Now, how many New Age spiritual people today do you see who accept this idea without question that we have a higher and lower nature? I hear it all the time. For example, we have a higher self, apparently. We have, our entire job is to develop our soul, develop our spirituality. Well, this is saying no. That's all part of the ego's program, in fact, which is mind-blowing. A tied-up sack can also refer to the camouflage that disguises a belief system. The disguise is composed of loaded words that surround the belief system with a shield of taboos, preventing us from questioning its basic premises. Among such loaded words are ancient, sacred, and untouchable. Only mistaken beliefs need to be protected by such camouflaging. Cosmic truth, as the sage makes us aware, is not something fixed or capable of being written in a once-and-for-all format that makes it untouchable, unquestionable, or unchangeable. The truths of life can only be discovered through questioning the untruths that cover them up and make them inaccessible. The search, therefore, is for the untruths. Another loaded concept is that of the spiritual path. The idea of such a path is a trap for two reasons. The word spiritual falsely implies that the meaning of our existence lies in disembodiment and the rejection of our connection with the earth and nature. That's so true, is it not? 2, spiritual path implies a path already trodden by others, exactly, which we are to follow. In looking to these others for guidance instead of to the cosmic teacher, the sage, we find ourselves stuck in a tied-up sack, unable to follow our inner truth. As the sage teaches, each individual is meant to follow his own inner truth. This path alone leads him to the unending growth and discovery that occurs by handhold truths. Each handhold truth allows us to discover the uniqueness of each moment and leads us to an ever enlarging view. This is the only path that directly connects us through our life in a body with the gifts of nature and through nature with the ever evolving cosmic consciousness. All right, let's see what the Rave line 4 has to say about that. Secretiveness. More than modesty, the ability to preserve harmony through discretion. Venus, the exaltation. The higher goal transcends personal acclaim. The team player acknowledged as the leader, but never the captain, where higher knowing does not have to be expressed to be recognized. I don't really know what that means. The detriment, Mars, again, loose lips sink ships. The unquenchable fire of the ego engenders enmity, the inability to keep silent when the opportunity arises for expression. I really don't know what that means either, to be honest. Okay, line 5. A yellow lower garment brings supreme good fortune. This line tells us that if a person does not suppress his natural modesty, he will have good fortune. A person may receive this line when he is either tempted to intervene self-importantly or has already done so in a situation for which he has asked the sage to help. This line counsels him to let go and allow the sage and the helpers to take care of the matter, unhindered by his attention. The yellow lower garment refers to the way the sage and the helpers operate from their hidden place in their own mode, which is the mode of transformation, and in their own time. The time required to accomplish their task is always relevant to the circumstances of the moment. The yellow lower garment is also a metaphor for the cosmic consciousness and the helpers that are compressed in the forms. When humans look at things, including their own bodies, as only matter that has no consciousness, a spell is put on the helpers within those things, blocking their ability to help. In the case of a person's body, the spell takes away the body's will to live. The yellow lower garment also refers to the body's knowledge of its inner truth. We know what inner truth is by the resonance it strikes within us when we hear it. Each person is born possessing a treasure chest of inner truth as part of his body. Each cell contains imprints of what cosmic truth feels like, and it is his direct connection with the cosmic consciousness. He therefore can always trust his inner truth. And yeah, so let's see what line 5 of the Rave said. Intelligent application. The exaltation, Mercury, the strategist with Mercury exalted, reason management of resources, higher knowing is a gift for strategy. The detriment, Earth, the inability to share responsibility or recognize the abilities of others, higher knowing as an exclusively individual and selfish process. All right, line 6, dragons fight in the meadow. Their blood is black and yellow. That rhymes. Traditionally, this line was taken to mean that the dark element should yield to the light because its time is over. This implied that the two elements were separate and meant to give way to each other. It also implied that the light was higher and leading, and that the dark should yield, indicating a hierarchical relationship that assumes that the right element leads, there will be peace, and if the wrong one leads, there will be discord. Since the light, as noted in the general text, is the cosmic consciousness, and the dark, its expression and form, there is no such hierarchical relationship, competition, or struggle possible between them. The light and the dark form a unity that operates through one principle only, the principle of attraction between complements. The meadow here is a metaphor for the field of opposites presumed by the collective ego. The dragons which fight upon it are the two supposed options from which we are to pick. These options are opposite ways to do things that compete with each other, such as socialism versus capitalism, or materialism versus idealism, with each presenting itself as the right alternative. The person receiving this line is thus caught in arguments of right and wrong and cannot find his way out, because the point of this duality is to keep him within the field of opposites and from recognizing the invisible world of the helpers. The solution is to step out of this duality through eradicating those mistaken ideas about how the cosmos really operates, thus to reunify with its harmony. Once a person remembers the helpers and asks for their help, his problem disappears. False seed phrases connected with this line are, all belief systems have at their bottom the same basic truths. How often do you hear that? In reality, they show the same falsehood that humans are the centerpiece of creation and are therefore superior. The forces of nature combat each other. Nature is man's enemy. You either belong to the evil or you belong to the good, are some examples. Also in relation to this line is the use of certain words that have no cosmic basis, and when used create opposition, such as the words culprit, enemy, and villain. They arouse opposing dragons to fight because they are dragons in themselves. When used in relation to ideas, these words become invested with evil personalities and thus act as dragons. They can only be deprived of their life when a person says the inner no to them as words and no longer uses them for any purpose. With respect to a person's chi energy, receiving this line indicates that its two components, the light and the dark, are fighting each other instead of cooperating. This has been caused by beliefs that put one part of his nature up as higher and light and the rest as lower and dark. Through embracing the higher and rejecting the lower, he's put a poison arrow on himself that causes disturbances of the heart, the vascular system, and the blood pressure. The disturbance can be corrected by ridding himself of the poison arrow involved. All right, and line 6 from the Rave fixation. Unable or unwilling to see the whole picture. The exaltation of Mercury. With Mercury exalted, less negative, though the intellect becomes absorbed in constant rationalization, higher knowing that is extremely narrow in its receptivity. And the detriment, Saturn. The need for security may distort awareness to its ultimate perversion, destructiveness. The higher self absorbed with the mundane and the need for security. So, yeah, that is the second hexagram. And the main thing I want you to take away from this hexagram is this is to question, really question, and even possibly reject this idea that the light and the dark are opposites. And I don't know how many times I've heard, people say this to me, like, oh, well, all bad things come from the dark, or the dark is necessary in terms of being bad, and all that. No, the dark is not bad at all. Like, there's nothing bad about the dark. The dark and the light are not opposites. They don't fight each other. They're one entity. And it's our mistaken beliefs in seeing the light and the dark as opposites, as fighting each other, that causes these problems in the first place. Or seeing our natures being divided as in higher and lower, or as in seeing ourselves as spiritual, or a part of ourselves as spiritual, and the other half being lowly or earthy or base, and all this. All right, so that was hexagram 2, and I'll see you guys in the next one. See ya.